Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled to have with us today Amy Calandrino, who is founder of Alchemo Holdings. She is a director for Cushman Wakefield out of Orlando. And last but not least, author of From Perfect to Real. Amy, welcome. Great to see you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
So, Amy, we had the pleasure of meeting. Well, we've collaborated over the years, but we had a lot of fun this past year. And I always forget if it was Palm Desert or Palm Springs. It was somewhere in the desert in California for the CREI Summit. So I want to thank Ken Ashley and the team again. We're doing this as part of a CREI mini series. So for those of the audience who don't know what CREI is all about, maybe talk a little bit about, what that is, kind of what that event was, and then maybe we can use that as a springboard to begin our conversation.
That's a great way to start our conversation. And so I've actually been going to CREI Summit since the first one in 2021. It came together when Ken Ashley, Coy Davidson, and some other more prolific people on social media talked about, well, we interact all the time on social media. How about we get together, in real life? And of course, this is like COVID, and it was really good for us all to get together. It started first to be called a CREI, more of influencers, but it's grown to be much bigger than that because it's more than social media. It bears down into your press releases, your thought leadership, and so many other facets of creating influence. And then also we focus a lot on AI now and how to be better at commercial real estate. And so the I is more so innovators nowadays. But again, they had it in 2021 in Lake Tahoe. I think 2022 was in New Orleans. 2023 was in my hometown, Orlando. And then 2024, I can't remember where we were. Atlanta, Ken's hometown. And then we were in Palm Desert just this year. And actually, I think that's where SAOR that I'm part of is going to be in the spring for their spring conference. So now I already know the lay of the land and already played one of the golf courses and get to go play the other one.
Wonderful. It was my first time attending, and it's such a great community because it's really a group of people that aren't just trying to. When you think influence, it's I'm trying to influence other people, and to me, it was really a community of like-minded professionals who are trying to lift each other up, and that's, I know, certainly what you embody. So we'll get into more about kind of takeaways from that, but again, I just wanted to spotlight that because, again, so social media was originally what brought us all together, but how amazing to bring that offline in person. So maybe for our audience, maybe give a little bit of a background about your story. So you're a broker who've now, in addition, you've transitioned into investing. So maybe you could just give our audience a little bit of a sense of kind of what your focus is, and also what you've been doing now on the investing side.
Yeah, absolutely. So prior to brokerage, I think it's important to say that I was in the legal field. I had aspirations of going to law school. I was a business and commercial real estate law paralegal. And so, I worked on a lot of different closings, interacted with a lot of small, medium-sized businesses. And there were a couple things like I noticed along the way. One is if they weren't very thoughtful about the commercial real estate decisions, there were some ramifications that came on later on. But then also if they made really good choices, especially owner occupiers that become their own landlord and pay their own rent, and then maybe start to build like a portfolio and springboard that into there, just how wealthy, they were. And it's, was really interesting to see. But what I saw in my particular market, and, every broker has their own, specialty, but I would say my specialty is working with small, medium-sized businesses, like what I, had in my own brokerage, and then helping them to purchase commercial real estate once they start to cash flow. And then also then start to springboard that into investments. But so I worked as a paralegal for almost a decade, and did well at that. I first started to want to invest probably like in 2009, but even though we had a bunch of money, there was no capital available, and so we kind of put that aside and signed another lease. And then at that point, I was still with the law firm. That was 2009, and then after that, I started my brokerage and started transitioning, out of law to go at that full time. We ended up in 2019 having an opportunity to purchase a building that would allow my husband's law firm to be on the first floor, and then my second floor would be my brokerage. We were there for a number of years, but our space needs kind of changed, and we decided to put it up for sale. And I can talk a little bit about that, but I think we were more so focusing on how I got into it. But that's kind of springboarded where I am now. And I made some decisions to, we were outside of Orlando and more of like a secondary market. And then we decided to reinvest in downtown's Orlando core. And so then we 1031 into 2 buildings, which both of them are investments now. We don't use them as owner occupied.
Amy, that asset that you bought in 2019 with your husband, is that what sort of started Alchemo Holdings? Because I know you have your investment company as well as your brokerage efforts. So it would be great to hear about kind of how that started. And I know there's a history behind that name, Alchemo Holdings. So it would be great to hear a little bit more information on that.
Well, so when we first purchased it, again, we kind of more so intended to utilize it. And I wasn't even going to utilize the whole second floor. I was going to maybe lease out some of it to someone else, but we purchased it in the name of the actual address. But then when we started to 1031 into another property, I'm like, I don't want to own these properties that have a completely different address in it. And so my husband and I talked about it, and his grandfather came over from Italy. And they came over from the island of Sicily, and they were from a small town outside of Palermo called Alchemo. And there's actually a Calandrino tower there. And so we decided to rename our company Alchemo. And that would be like our name moving forward to give homage to, his family and his roots. And also, it's like a sense of pride now, a couple generations from, coming, going through Ellis Island, my husband's grandfather, just, where we are now. And then, now we're starting to look for, other properties and other opportunities.
And is Alchemo mainly focused on Orlando?
Yeah, so our focus is in the downtown Orlando core. We are currently we just have a couple properties right now, but we're also looking at other ones that are adjacent and in the same area. There's different districts within Orlando, more than like 10. One of them is called the Mills 50 district, and every district has its own personality, but I really like Mills 50. It's kind of like a foodie haven. There's a lot of walkability. And there's a lot of culture. It's pretty cool.
So Amy, I love the fact that you bought your own office, because that's really taking again, as a broker, you're encouraging owner operators to purchase their own office. So you're practicing what you preach. And this reminds me of the episode we did with my friend Michael Rutter. He has an entire business up here in New York focused on office condos, and the buyers for these are end users. So for our audience, it's a great reminder that investing in real estate doesn't just have to be for income producing properties. It could be for your business, and it could be a great way to get into the business. And I think about some of my clients over the years, and sometimes it was the business that originally prompted, buying, owning the real estate. But after decades, the real estate became so much more valuable than the business itself. I think of the Liberty Brass Factory that, long after they were manufacturing brass in Long Island City, it became a large scale development site. So, but Amy, when you made that purchase for your office and along with your husband's law firm, I'm curious, did you take advantage of any of the SBA loans? So I know there's very favorable financing for owner occupancy, or did you just get bank financing? Maybe share with the audience a little bit about how you
call
did
it
that.
The Calandrino special.
Okay.
What I like to get is a 15-year term with a 15-year amortization. and try to get locked in with 15% down on owner occupied loans. I know it's a little bit more, like probably 20% down right now for conventional financing, but love the SBA. If you need to use SBA financing, by all means do it. But sometimes the amount of fees and the increased interest rate and those kinds of things, really, if you can muster the additional equity to put into the property, that's the way I look at it, rather than you spending it on fees. And so we bought it with a 15-year down, 15-year amortization, and 15-year term, locked in. It was interesting. The buyer that purchased my building was someone that I had connected with in law. It was the Florida Bar Foundation that helps, and that they were wanting to buy it and then expand into the second floor. And we literally negotiated the deal at the conference room table. But then when I 1031 in the two other buildings, we did a 15, 15, 15 again. So I just didn't want to have a balloon and have level, that's what kind of makes sense for me when I look at the cost of capital.
So Amy, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
On the investment side, because I know you're based in Orlando, you're clearly bullish in Orlando. What about Orlando makes it a compelling investment opportunity for you and your husband? And what's next for Alchemo? Like, are you guys looking at any other markets, or are you staying where you have boots on the ground?
I think we'll stay here in Orlando. I think we continue to have inbound migration. Retail vacancy is about 3.5%, is less than 5%, but in that particular submarket is like 3.5%. We're also adjacent to a town called Winter Park. The office vacancy in Winter Park is 3%. What I really like with Mills 50 is, again, it's adjacent to Winter Park, which is a really strong community. And then we're also adjacent to Orlando. So I think I'd really want to dominate that before we maybe look into other things, or maybe I look to be like an LP in some other markets until I really get good at that. So
that makes a lot of sense. And you clearly
we actually did a second mortgage on the buildings last week, and we're going to, so we have, we upzoned one of the buildings, and we actually have a birthing center that's going to move into the former law office. So, and because he doesn't use it anymore. And then the other one, so we just have two, and then we're again trying to acquire more, but the other one we're going to renovate as well. And we just finished going through a growth management plan amendment with the city of Orlando to kind of, again, upzone it, because we're literally only 600 feet from a Starbucks and, in this really more walkable area, which usually when you think of Orlando, you don't think walkable. You think you have to kind of drive everywhere, in Orlando. But again, this is a really great area. And so then we're about to start on another renovation of we bought them next door. So that's another piece of advice I'd give to someone is, try to, start to acquire and piece together properties adjacent to it. There's more value.
Are these retail properties then with office above, or when you say that there's potential for redevelopment, do you think at one point you take this down and build something new?
Yeah. So what I see long-term for this area is it's kind of like an office, but you can use it for like a retail-y kind of office. So like maybe like a State Farm kind of office, that kind of office. Or now that we've done the growth management plan amendment, we could do it kind of more of like Medtail. But there's also a number of townhouses in the area. So as that continued, and it has great school districts. And so like if anyone ever wanted to tear them down and maybe redevelop as we continue to get more land and more buildings and they're older, then they could redevelop it into something else.
Are you leasing all the buildings that you're buying, or are you working through another broker?
Am I leasing them out? Yes.
Yeah, you personally.
Lease them out. Yes. Yeah. So my specialty is office and retail. So yeah.
Okay. So you wear a lot of hats. Are there, so with your background in leasing as well, are there any misconceptions from like the investor's perspective that like maybe we have about tenant demand in office and retail, like just seeing things from the tenant's perspective? Like, are there any sort of misalignments between the tenant and the investor right now in that kind of space?
Interesting.
In
So are
terms of
there
like
any
the types of spaces that they want, or just general appetite for office and retail down there, like based on what you've seen in recent leasing activity, is
yeah.
that
So what I see right now is that tenants are more willing to invest in the spaces in exchange for a lower interest rate. And so I have a number of assets that are very similar to my own that I also represent in the same area that are owned by other people, whether they're doctors or lawyers or otherwise. And I'm finding on these smaller, transactions where you're representing a more small, medium-sized business, these investors are not institutional grade investors. And so they're more private investors, and they're not wanting to stroke, $100,000, $200,000 check to improve the space. They would rather, reduce the rent, provide more concessions. And then because we have such a low vacancy rate here in Orlando, I'm finding that tenants are fine with that. And there's also some tax advantages with the big, beautiful bill that came out, as far as them going ahead and depreciating the improvements they're making into the space.
Yeah, Amy, is sometimes the concern from landlords that they're going to go and improve the space, spend a lot of money on the TI, and then what happens if the tenant doesn't make it? And that's so how do you weigh that and make sure that, again, if you're doing a 6 or 7 figure renovation, that you're going to have a tenant at the end of the day who's going to take on the space and is going to pay rent? Because the worst possible thing that you could do is do a custom build, and then the tenant doesn't make it, and then you're upside down on that. So how do you protect? How do landlords protect themselves against that?
So I think there's like a mindset is like, it's kind of like you don't want to necessarily visualize that the person is going to blow out, but you have to. The fact of the matter is that potentially they could blow out, and you have to think to yourself, if you're making this investment, if they do, then who, is this going to be utilized? Are you going to be able to utilize this and lease this back out again? And so I have a landlord right now who has a great space, and someone's wanting to make it a hair salon, and that's going to be a very unique custom build out. And so how easy is it going to be? And, unfortunately that person's been kind of him and hawing, on getting the lease signed. And now some other people that are much more suitable, and they're going to put a more attractive build out in there. And it will be easier for me to lease out should they fail, unfortunately, sometimes things change in business. So how do they level that out? I think you have to think to yourself is, if the worst case scenario happens, what position does that leave me in? And then just picture that worst case scenario and see if it's worth you taking that risk. But I think don't act out of fear. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have a deal, and you don't have any other options, and you feel pretty good about it based on the collateralization and the guarantees and the amount of security deposits, move forward.
Let's talk a little bit more about this, because I think this is going to be helpful to our audience. Needless to say, if you have Starbucks that wants to sign a lease with you, I think most people understand the value of a corporate guarantee. However, if you're dealing with a mom and pop, how do you get comfortable with their financial wherewithal? How do you decide what type of, security deposit? Are you getting personal guarantees? I know in New York, one of the provisions that we have here, and maybe because it's so challenging to evict a tenant, is a good guy clause, meaning that if the tenant is up to date on the rent, at any point they could just give you the keys back and walk away from the space, no harm, no foul, which I guess is better than the alternative. Than they're squatting in the space and all the legal costs. But again, that's hopefully not the case you're planning for. So I guess the question is, how do you qualify the tenant to make sure that they're going to be able to pay the rent and that you have the proper guarantees in place?
I think there's a couple things I look at that. So first of all, I've developed an application like over the years that my landlords can use. Now, obviously, I say you're welcome to use your own or supplement it, but it's more like 7 pages long, and I ask them for the entire vision of the space and their brand book and those kinds of things. And I want to see like how invested they are in the deal and give us a narrative about their experience, and also again how they see the space, and then give me their entire like pro forma of what are they going to put into the space, what do they expect their revenue to be year after year after year. If somebody can't give me that, then how disciplined of an entrepreneur are they going to be in business owner when they go forward? And like I look at the speed in which they can give it to us and the thoughtfulness of it. It also asks for a lot of financial due diligence, and are they giving me everything? And then actually looking through it. I mean, just recently we were given bank statements and we looked, and it looked like they got a lien from the Florida Department of Revenue because they failed to pay their sales taxes. And that's like a red flag. So, I mean, also look through every single one of the documents. And so I think it's highly important that you don't just judge the people based on meeting them during their interview. I think you do in-depth due diligence to get a reading of them, look at the speed in which they're doing, look at their evasiveness. I mean, I use this saying all the time. People who have money don't mind talking about the fact that they have money, and like and sharing their financials. The people that I see that are hesitant about being full kimono, it feels to me like they have something to hide. And so when you're working with those local credit people, there's a little bit of that. How does that feel? What is the cadence? What is their thoroughness that you look at overall? So, and then how difficult are they, in lease negotiations? Don't be afraid to pivot as a landlord. Just because you gave someone a lease, there's no moral requirement that you have to do this deal with this person if another opportunity becomes available. I mean, at the end of the day, business is business. You're marrying this person. It's, you're getting into this business relationship with someone for a long period of time. So don't be afraid to like pivot just because you have a lease out there. Obviously, if you have an exclusive negotiations clause or something like that, you have to abide by that or run the clock on that. But I've been there myself, where I was in negotiations with one person and it just wasn't going very well, and you gotta pivot. So until the lease is signed, you have insurance, you have your money, and keys have been exchanged. I feel like it's fair game for you to get the best possible tenant into your space.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about how your deals are capitalized. Do you typically put up your own equity, or do you work with a partner typically, or are you syndicating them out to friends and family, high net worth? Like, what kind of channels are you tapping into?
At this time, it's been just funded by my own family and the money that my husband and I make. So he's as I said, I worked with him. He was a business attorney, and then I'm pretty successful in commercial real estate. So we've funded it so far. But I do see, as I continue to do more deals, that I may look to start to do some development and those types of opportunities. And at that point, look to do some syndications. So.
Oh, that's exciting. So, because I know you've made this big leap recently as you've joined Cushman & Wakefield from Beyond Commercial.
Yes.
So as you're sort of developing that side of your business, are you also looking to grow the investment side sort of in tandem, or are you kind of more heavily weighted towards one or the other?
So I had a brokerage for 15 years. And at the end of the day, you got to look at your ROI on your time and on your money. And at the end of the day, I didn't have any, I had no desire to scale my brokerage. I'd scaled it at one point, and then really it was more small. And there just really wasn't a huge ROI. And you have to, as an investor or entrepreneur, you have to look at, where is my time and my money, like talents and treasure, where is that best spent? And so I really looked at that. And what I see for me and my family is that continuing to build passive, income streams to create generational wealth for our family, and utilize the money that we're making through, the vocations that we have to obviously help to kind of fuel that. But when you're spending a lot of time, I feel like I've freed up at least a dozen hours a week of not having to do the finance and the HR and the visioning and all those different things. And I'm freed up. I'm still an entrepreneur. I'm still an investor. I just chose that, I'm going to be a 1099 within, this larger construct, which I feel is going to be most beneficial to me and my family long term.
So I want to quickly just give a shout out to Marcy Moneypenny and Mo Regalia, who I see are both put comments in the chat, and there you have it, the CREI community and network showing up and supporting. So we appreciate your joining us, as well as all the others who are on the live stream with us now. So, Amy, we've had broker investors on this show before, and I think it is important, especially because we also have a lot of brokers who listen to this show who want to learn how to invest. Conflict is a real thing, and I think so is disclosure and doing things in the right way. Certainly when you're working for a publicly traded firm. So maybe talk a little bit about how you navigate that conflict or potential conflict as when you're owning, but you're also maybe leasing similar space. So how do you kind of, what are some good guidelines that brokers who might want to invest could learn from you on that?
Well, I think always do the right thing. Like, I know when we sold our first building that we bought it and we ended up gutting it, renovating it, putting our offices in it, and then, selling it to the Florida Bar Foundation. And then we were 1031ing. I was representing a law firm at the same time that was looking at the same exact size, asset that we were also looking to go into. I told them, and I said, hey, this new property has come up in the Mills 50 area. This is what it looks like. Here's the photos. And I shared that information with him. I think that you need to be transparent. And at the end of the day, if my client had wanted that and the same I would have let my client go full steam ahead. So if you are working with someone that is potentially having the same need that you as an investor are looking for, I think the worst thing that you could do is withhold that information, because later on, they're going to see that you bought the building and be like, well, why didn't you tell me about this? And so I think just being super transparent and working with the highest level of ethics and not withholding any information from your clients.
Great point. Amy, maybe talk a little bit about your CCIM distinction. You're an SIOR as well, and I know that there's definitely accreditation that goes into that, but for our audience, maybe you could just tell them what CCIM is, and then would you recommend that for others who are looking to level set their analytical underwriting skills?
Well, absolutely. I started on my CCIM journey about a decade ago, and I found it to be really transformational, especially since I tend to work with more occupier investor types. There's 4 classes that you need to take: 101, 102, and 103. 101 starts with kind of like a primer of commercial real estate. 102 is more about like site selections, demographics, and studying, creating void analysis, all those types of things. 103 is more about owner user decision making and lease versus buy analysis. And then at the end of the day, 104 is kind of melding that all together, more advanced techniques such as, should you continue to hold the asset, refi? Should you sell the building? Should you do a sale leaseback? And looking at all those tools. And at the end of the day, I feel like the more information and the more tools I have in my toolbox, the better served my clients are. And so I finished my CCIM journey in 2018. And so I got it done in about three years. But I still go and do discounted cash flow analysis and utilize all the tools. I've also created my own pro formas based on the information I've used there. There's a certain amount, as I always say, there's like a little bit of a women's intuition that I'm kind of blessed with. I can kind of see, I can see whether it's going to work generally or not, but you got to run the numbers. You got to know your numbers and figure it out. And so CCIM really helped me a lot there. The other thing they did was they had a mentorship program. And at the time I had my own brokerage. And so they paired me with someone who was very experienced in office and in retail. And they helped me tremendously kind of figure out what my business plan was, but then also thought about, at the end of the day, there's business, but then there's also life. What were my other personal goals that I wanted to achieve? So I'm really grateful for that. And actually, the person that facilitated all of that was Jen Pollock. from Ameris Bank, and she actually has a debt on both our buildings. So it's like a full
Wow.
circle 10 years later. Yeah.
So Amy, a lot of people, I think, talk about how coming from the principal side to the brokerage side can be helpful. I mean, I recently made that transition, and it's definitely been helpful, like bringing sort of like an understanding of what investors want and need. But going from the brokerage side to the investor side, how has your brokerage experience helped you with making these investments? Because I feel like a lot of people don't talk about it from that angle as much. Like what are the main lessons that you've learned from brokerage that have helped you sort of see things in your real estate investments that someone who didn't have that background wouldn't have?
Well, I think one thing is if you have a really good deal in front of you, is to again have a long-term vision plan. I use that example because a lot of investors, maybe for instance, if there's a really good tenant, may try to do like a 5-year deal rather than a 10-year deal. But, on one of my buildings recently, I had someone ready, willing, and able, and they're starting at a really good rate, willing to do a 10-year deal. So obviously I have to pay the tenant rep, the commission based on that. But I'm happy to do that because of the broker side. Like I know how much work it's going to be if they decide to leave after 5 years versus, locking them in for a longer period of time. And then I also know potentially the goodwill that you're putting out by as an investor, if you're treating a broker well, that would be beneficial, in a long-term place. I guess those are a couple things that I would look at, is because I know how deals are transacted and how long it can take to fill vacancies. And again, treating brokers well when it's my own assets and I'm the principal.
So that's great. Thank you. And Amy, I'd like to now talk a little bit about your book, From Perfect to Real. And I love the subtitle here: Ditch Perfection, Shift Your Mindset, and Thrive on Your Terms. So you're also creator of the SPORT, SPORT success system. So maybe just a little bit for our audience on kind of what goes into shifting your mindset and some of the lessons from your book.
Also, what does SPORT stand for?
Yeah. So so I think I need to actually rewind to the first year I went to the CREI summit. So I'll kind of incorporate that back in there. I have 2 children, one that was born in 2019 and then another that was born in early 2021. And in 2021, I purchased my first building in 2019, and I was going through a lot, and I took on way too much and didn't really adjust my life to having kids, and I kept going full throttle. And I also suffered from some postpartum depression and that kind of stuff. And so I was not in a great headspace when the CREI summit came around. And in fact, I wasn't even really wanting to go, but I made myself go. And as you probably have seen too, James, it's a super powerful community. And there's nothing more powerful than being in a community that people are like, yes, you can. And you get that encouragement, and, you can do Mel Robbins sometimes says like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just do it. Just go out and do it. And so I went there, and the one thing we forgot to mention, I actually have a podcast called The Performance Mindset Show. That came out of that summit is podcasting, because I felt like my mindset wasn't very strong. And what is a way to make your mindset stronger? Well, study mindset and talk to people about mindset and work to strengthen my mindset. And so then that mindset has served me really well in, business and investing and otherwise. I also wanted to come up with like a training system for my brokerage to help train my agents to help them strengthen their mindset. And so I created what was called the SPORT success system for my brokerage internally. And I did that in early 2022. And so S is synergistic. It's the people you're around. It's the energy you're consuming. And I think that's key. P is being persistent and always pushing through, no matter what, and doing the things that you don't want to do. You just do it, right? Just do it. Like Art Williams said, just do it. And O is omniscient, but more in a sense of being a curious person and always looking to learn and expand your opportunities. R is radical. Not being afraid to do new things and do things in a way that maybe no one else has done. T is tautological, and I mean that in the sense of kind of rinsing, repeating, habit stacking, and like kind of continuing to pull all these things into you on a daily basis. When I started practicing that in 2022 and being really mindful of the communities and the people that I'm around and having that synergistic mindset, and then just, pushing through and being more diligent about, the studying and being curious, and also not being afraid to be different. At the end of the day, we are all slightly different human beings. That's okay. And then just creating this more healthy habit, construct, not leaving things to the whim each day. So that's more about the sports success system. So now my podcast is about 120 episodes in. I wrote the book from about early 2023 into 2024. And that was a really transformational time for me. It really turned me in more introspective and had me think more about what was great for me. And so it was about the time I actually finished the book and was promoting the book that I took the time off and then decided to sell my brokerage. And then, so now I'm kind of into the next level of my career with investing and spending time with my family. So I hope that kind of answers your question, gives you a lot of information about everything.
Having that level of self-reflection, especially in such a public way, I feel like requires a lot of vulnerability. Have you always kind of been vulnerable, or is that something that you've sort of discovered as a really powerful tool as you've kind of gone through this journey?
It's funny you say that. I ran across a video not too long ago, and my aunt and uncle were telling me on this old VHS tape, like, "Are you being a shy Amy guy?" Because my little name, but I was more introverted and shy. It really was practicing what I was already putting out to the universe, and I think just year over year, having the podcast, being around other people who exude that level of confidence, it became easier. But yes, it did create a lot of vulnerability. And I get calls from people, all the time that this part of the book really touched me. This resonated with me. So I'm really happy that I did have that level of vulnerability, but I would have to say it wasn't something necessarily natural to me, maybe even just like 5 years ago.
Yeah, Amy, I definitely appreciated and really enjoyed the book and how forthright and honest you were about your experience, and I'm sure it'll help many people. I can also personally attest to your just do it mindset. So we were after the full day session at CREI. It was probably 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I was still on East Coast time, and I said, we had hiked one of the mountains the morning before, and we said, "Yeah, Amy, we're going out again tomorrow morning at 5:30 a.m." And you said, "Yeah, I'll be there. I'm up for it." And I thought, there's a lot of things that people say, after 10, 11 o'clock at night about their intentions and whether or not it was going to happen. And sure enough, you were there the next morning and, showed up, and we got to see the sunrise and make it to the top of the mountain with Corey Zelnick and Gabe Einhorn, who have also been doing incredible things on social media. But Amy, you do so much, again, in the personal life, a great mother, and all you do for your kids. You've got your brokerage business, you've got your investing. You've also written a book. You have a podcast. It's a lot, right? But you do it. And I know part of that is that progress, not perfection. The fact
Right.
that, if you do this much, not everything's going to be perfect. But maybe for our audience to understand, maybe someone who's looking to develop their own personal brand, right? So, is it write a book? Is it do a podcast? And maybe talk about how you and the amount of content that you put out through social media channels. Again, a lot of, great work that you put out there. So, how do you choose what you do? Kind of what's the strategy to go about putting that content out? And then, ultimately, what kind of benefit are you getting from that for your business?
Yeah, so a few things there. And so I would say to anyone that's wanting to build a personal brand, start small, start with like baby steps. And so, what I was doing 8 years ago was maybe just a little bit at a time, making a big deal out of every deal and celebrating those that I was working with and sharing to the universe. Let's just say, for instance, I helped a flower shop find a new space, or I helped this attorney find a new place to grow their law practice, is sharing those stories. I'm fortunate that I don't work with, institutions, REITs that are highly secretive, and I can really leverage it. And so by tagging those people, they're sharing it with different people. And so making a big deal of every deal was a very effective strategy for me, and really helped to share things locally, what I was doing. And I would say there's been periods where I've tried to do too much social media, and it just like is exhausting. And so, you really have to do what you can manage, and then find the mechanism that works, best for you. There's some people that are on Twitter like all day interacting, and they have the most, prolific things to say. That's not really me. Like, I'm more so like interacting with them. And so find the channel that works best for you. I like Instagram, personally. I'm usually, kind of like, I'll do a day in the life of every so often, and share that, I started the day here at this coffee shop, and then I went here downtown. And so you find the storytelling method that fits you best, and what's actually consistent. I think there's a lot of people that, including Bob Knackle that you've had on your show, and you work with, like, it's all about consistency. And like, if you're not consistent and you're just going to do something for a little while and give up, just like, don't even do it. And then I do set limits on myself. I may check social media for a little bit when I'm working out in the morning, but I'm not going to check it again until I have all my rocks are done for the day. Everything that I have on my calendar is done for the day. I set a monthly content calendar. Is very helpful for me, and something I'd recommend to someone do as well. And of course, I'll intersperse some stuff, and then know what your content pillars are. And so like, my content pillars is all about celebrating small and medium-sized businesses, all about real estate investing. I got a new license plate, by the way. It says big ROI.
Oh, wow.
Cool. I'm like, golf license plate. It's so awesome.
That's amazing.
Beyond. And so obviously, new Amy. So big ROI, people love that. So, but yeah, I would say the other thing I do is I map out my time on Sundays or Saturdays. I take like an hour, and I have a handwritten planner, and that I live by, and I write everything out, make sure I'm prepared for every meeting that's on my calendar. And yeah, I think even though it seems like I do a lot, I say no to a lot. A lot more than anyone would even think that I say no to. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, I can't do this because, like, for instance, people are wanting to have coffee and lunch right now to celebrate my transition. I would love to. I have a closing tomorrow. I had a closing yesterday, and this is Thanksgiving
Congrats.
week, recording this. I mean, it's amazing. And I have a lot more closings for the year. I'm like, let's get together in January, and look at that. And then let's have a coffee. I can't really, I have to be very careful how many lunches I have, because lunches are 2 hours. And so I think it's all about balancing and figuring out what you can actually manage.
So with all of these moving parts, you clearly need to stay very organized. What are some ways that being a perfectionist has gotten in the way of kind of just doing what you need to be doing? And then what are some, like, how have you gotten over that? Because I know that's kind of what your book is about, kind of ditching perfectionism. What are some tools that can be helpful for ditching perfectionism?
That's a great question.
It's really
a bit
difficult.
more natural to me. I don't nearly have the anxiety and perfectionism that I used to have. I'll be frank in that. What are tools is just shifting your mindset, and just doing your best, and knowing that you're doing your best every day. And a big thing is I just try not to take on the right amount. I have a big saying right now that I have on a sticky on my desk at work is, quality client with a quality property equals a quality like result. And so like, at the end of the day, if the client is not a quality client, and they're going to be micromanaging me and draining me of energy, or they're looking for something that's not like in my core, or they're trying to sell something that's not in my core, and it's not like a repeat relationship, then it's not gonna be a quality result, because it's just not gonna be a great like experience. And so that's one of my new mantras I keep in the top of my brain. And so staying disciplined and not taking on too much, and just being highly impactful and purposeful.
Yeah, and I could probably add to that as well, because I'm definitely a progress over perfection kind of guy. Because look, even if the final product is, 95% as good as it could be, and sure, if you spent 2-3 times the amount of time to get it to 100%, you'd only be able to do, a third or half of what you could put out there. So, I mean, I was talking to someone at the Massimo Con summit, the virtual summit that I just came back from in Vegas. And I was talking to one of the speakers there about the videos that I put out there, and be curious if Mo has thoughts on this as well. I mean, she is the absolute expert in this category, but the videos that I'm doing from the street, which sometimes get some of the best responses. He asked me, well, how many times do you have to practice doing that? And I said, I just one take. I said, the only time that I don't do it is if there's someone's leaning on a horn or a truck goes by or but other than that, I just let it roll. And sometimes I'll say something wrong. And, that's okay. I could go back and try to re-record it. But then oftentimes when I get in my head and I try to re-say the same thing, then I'll make 2 mistakes or 3 mistakes. So, that's just, I think it's a little more authentic too, than when you make a mistake and it's like, okay, just roll with it.
It's relatable too. I think people like things that are relatable.
Yeah. So, but Amy, I really appreciate, how much you care and the way you reach out, and because I don't want it to be confused with, it's, just trying to be, quick, and because, and I thank you for this personally, but why not share with the whole audience? I mean, you wrote a really nice review on my book. And it wasn't just like, hey, great job, great book. Like, I could really tell that you read the book, you absorbed it. And from reading your book, I know that when you grew up, you couldn't keep enough books in the house. You just go to the library and just read and read and read. So that obviously came through. But, really appreciate, I know there's so many people in the community that appreciate everything you do and give back. So I think with that, and this has been an incredible discussion. Amy, maybe share with our audience, maybe there's someone out there who is, kind of looking to kind of launch into their next phase. What is it, what are kind of the best steps to get in there, and let's maybe do that through the investor lens. So maybe you're speaking to a broker right now who has yet to make their first investment. They're seeing their clients and everyone, make these incredible deals. They want to get into it themselves. What would you say is the advice to get someone off the sidelines and into the game?
Okay. So I practice this in every single facet of my life. Is you visualize your future self. You visualize where it is you want to go. And so if you know that in 5 years, for instance, you want to own 3 properties, then you think of all the steps that you need to do to acquire those 3 properties, raise enough capital, and, figure out where you're looking, start to create, prospect, list of the properties you want to acquire, and, all those kinds of things. And so I think visualizing your future self will get you off the sidelines, and then you're reverse engineering what you need to do there. One of the most powerful stories I can think of someone that is an investor and took this advice is Nat Falcone. And she's out of Miami and invests a lot in Hialeah multifamily. She does a lot of like syndications. I met her at Beth Azor's conference, and also have met her at like Globe Street Women Commercial Real Estate Conference. But there was one year, I think she was at like 40 units. And then some, she's like, I'd like to, I would like to be at like 100 units next year, but it wasn't it wasn't with conviction. And then Beth like called her up on the stage or something like that happened. And it's like, no, you're going to do that. And she's like, okay, I'm going to do that. She came back the next year. She was at 100 units. And so if you don't write it down and you don't manifest it into life, how are you going to get that? You just be more, you're living your life haphazardly and not with intention and not with purpose. And so that's my advice in anything that you want to do. I know when we climbed the mountain, I said to you guys, I'm like, all right, I'm going to get stronger for the next time we go up the mountain. And let me tell you what, like I'm ready for the next mountain. So when I go out to SAOR in the spring, I'm going to be sprinting up that mountain. So.
There you go. Both figuratively and literally. So Amy, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us and our audience today. We're really grateful for everything that you're doing.
All right. Thanks so much for having me.
And we want to thank everyone, as always, for joining on the live stream or on iTunes, Apple Podcasts. But yeah, who listens to iTunes anymore? That's not even a thing anymore. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you are listening to this right now, we appreciate your subscribing, commenting, and sharing with a friend. That is really the best thing that we find that you can do when you get, how could you not get benefit out of this discussion? Share it with a friend, forward it on. And so, as always, you can go to jamesnelson.com. This site is not about me. We built this site for you to help you gain the insider's edge to real estate investing. That's where you can find the show notes. That's where you can find how to connect with Amy. There's also a lot of helpful resources on that, articles, and pretty shortly we're going to be rolling out a new course in partnership with Adventures in Commercial Real Estate on real estate investing. That's going to be super exciting. So keep a lookout for that as well. Until next week, thank you again for joining.
Thank you so much, Amy.